On the morning of December 22, 1944, snow fell softly on the frozen forests around the small Belgian town of Bastogne, but there was nothing calm about the silence. Inside the town, American soldiers were surrounded, cut off, cold, and running low on food, fuel, and ammunition. Outside the town, German artillery waited, confident and impatient. A German officer walked forward under a white flag and handed over a demand for surrender. Many believed Bastogne was finished, but what the Germans did not know was that hundreds of miles away, one man had already set events in motion that would turn mockery into shock and confidence into defeat. Just 1 week earlier, on December 16, 1944, before dawn, the German army launched its last great offensive in the West. Adolf Hitler had ordered a massive surprise attack through the Ardennes forest, a region the Allies believed was too rough and too quiet for a major assault. The goal was bold and dangerous. Split the American and British armies, capture the port of Antwerp, and force the Western Allies into a negotiated peace. German panzer divisions smashed through thin American lines, catching many units completely off guard. Roads clogged with refugees and retreating soldiers. Confusion spread fast. For a moment, it looked like the Germans had brought the war back to 1940. At the centre of the German plan stood Bastogne. This small town was not important because of its size or industry, but because of its roads. 7 major roads met there, making it the key to moving troops and supplies through the Ardennes. If the Germans controlled Bastogne, their armoured columns could move freely west. If they did not, the entire offensive would slow down. The German High Command knew this. So did the Americans, even if they realised it a little late. By December 18th, American commanders scrambled to react. Units were rushed toward the Ardennes from every direction. Among them was the 101st Airborne Division, known as the Screaming Eagles. They were resting in France after months of hard fighting and expected a quiet Christmas. Instead, they were loaded onto trucks with almost no winter gear and sent north at top speed. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, the acting division commander, arrived in Bastogne on December 19th. By the next day, the town was completely surrounded. Inside Bastogne, the situation was grim. Temperatures dropped well below freezing. Snow covered everything. Many soldiers had no gloves, no heavy coats, and little shelter. Medical supplies were scarce, and wounded men lay in makeshift aid stations. German artillery fired day and night, smashing buildings and cutting telephone lines. Planes could not fly because of thick clouds and fog. The men of the 101st Airborne, along with elements of the 10th Armoured Division and other units, dug foxholes into frozen ground and waited. Outside the ring, German commanders believed time was on their side. They had surrounded the town quickly and expected the Americans to surrender. On December 22nd, a German delegation approached Bastogne with a written demand. The message warned that further resistance was pointless and promised total destruction if the Americans refused. When the note reached General McAuliffe, he was woken from sleep. Confused and annoyed, he reportedly said one word: nuts. That single word became the official reply. The German officers left angry and insulted. To them, the surrounded Americans were mocking reality. They were wrong. While Bastogne held on, help was already moving. The man behind it was Lieutenant General George S. Patton, commander of the U.S. Third Army. Patton was in Luxembourg on December 16th when news of the German attack arrived. Many commanders were still trying to understand what was happening. Patton immediately grasped the danger. He knew that if the Germans broke through completely, the war could drag on for months or worse. He also knew that speed was everything. On December 19th, senior Allied commanders met in Verdun. General Dwight D. Eisenhower asked a critical question. How soon could Patton turn his army north and attack the German flank? Many expected the answer to be weeks. Patton shocked everyone. He said he could attack in 3 days. Some thought he was boasting. He was not. Patton had already ordered his staff to prepare plans just in case. He trusted preparation, discipline, and aggressive movement. Turning an entire army in winter, under combat conditions, was no small task. The Third Army had been pushing east toward Germany. Now it had to pivot nearly 90 degrees and move north through icy roads, traffic jams, and enemy interference. Tanks slid off roads, trucks broke down, men marched through snow with frozen feet. German aircraft attacked supply columns when the weather briefly cleared. Still, Patton pushed them forward without pause. By December 22nd, the same day the German surrender demand was delivered to Bastogne, Patton's lead units were already fighting their way north. The main thrust came from the south, aimed straight at the ring around Bastogne. The spearhead was led by the 4th Armoured Division, commanded by Major General Hugh Gaffey. At the front was Colonel Creighton Abrams, leading Combat Command B. Abrams was aggressive, calm, and trusted by his men. Patton trusted him completely. The German forces blocking the way were experienced and determined. They included elements of the 5th Fallschirmjäger Division and the Panzerlehr Division. These were not weak units. They used villages, forests, and roadblocks to slow the American advance. Snow and ice favoured the defenders. Every mile cost time and lives. Yet Patton refused to slow down. He demanded constant pressure, day and night. On December 23rd, the weather finally changed. The clouds broke. Allied aircraft filled the sky. Fighters attacked German positions, while transport planes dropped supplies into Bastogne. Parachutes carrying food, ammunition and medical gear floated down into the snow. Inside the town, morale surged. Men cheered as they watched the planes. They knew they were not forgotten. The siege was no longer hopeless. Outside, Patton's forces fought through villages like Martelange, Chaumont, and Bigonville. Roads were narrow and lined with trees. German anti-tank guns waited in ambush. American tank crews advanced carefully, firing into suspected positions. Infantry followed closely, clearing houses room by room. Progress was slow, but it never stopped. By December 24th, Christmas Eve, the distance between Patton's spearhead and Bastogne was less than 10 miles. The Germans understood the danger now. They launched counterattacks, trying to hold the corridor closed. Snow turned red around burning tanks. Radio messages crackled with urgency. Patton sent a short message to his commanders. Keep pushing. There would be no pause for Christmas. Inside Bastogne, Christmas Day arrived under shell fire. Soldiers shared whatever they had. Some received small gifts dropped by air. Others simply held the line. German attacks continued, especially on the eastern side of the perimeter. The defenders were exhausted but unbroken. They knew relief was close, even if they could not see it yet. On December 26, 1944, the breakthrough finally came. Near the village of Assenois, tanks of the 4th Armoured Division smashed through German defences. At around 4:50 in the afternoon, a tank commanded by Lieutenant Charles Boggess broke through the final roadblock and reached American lines from Bastogne. Soldiers climbed onto the tank, cheering and slapping its armour. The ring was broken. Bastogne was no longer surrounded. Patton's gamble had worked. In just 4 days, his army had turned, advanced through terrible conditions, and shattered the German encirclement. What the Germans had mocked as impossible was now a fact. Their offensive lost momentum. Fuel shortages grew worse. Allied pressure increased from every side. Bastogne remained in American hands, blocking key roads and forcing German units to detour and delay. The battle did not end that day. Fighting around Bastogne continued into January 1945. But the psychological turning point had passed. The German army had failed to destroy or capture the town. Their last major gamble in the west was bleeding out. Patton continued pushing north and east, while other Allied armies closed the bulge created by the German attack. For the soldiers who had held Bastogne, the relief meant survival. For the German commanders, it meant the collapse of their timetable. And for the wider war, it marked the beginning of the end of Hitler's final offensive. The mockery delivered in that surrender demand on December 22nd now sounded hollow and foolish. Years later, Bastogne became a symbol, not of easy victory, but of endurance under pressure. It showed what preparation, leadership, and determination could achieve even in the worst conditions. Patton's role was not just about speed or bold words. It was about understanding the moment and acting before the enemy could recover. When the German artillery fell silent and the roads reopened, the snow-covered fields around Bastogne told a quiet story. Tanks stood frozen in place, some destroyed, some abandoned. Foxholes marked the ground where young men had waited, unsure if help would come. And along those same roads, Patton's columns rolled on, pushing the war toward its final chapter. German mockery had ended not with a speech or a grand ceremony, but with the sound of American tank engines breaking through the snow, right on time. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.